Hello, I am Dr. Elena Estanol, and I am here today to share with you one of the biggest lessons I've learned regarding energy and enthusiasm. You may or may not know that I am a pretty energetic and enthusiastic person in general, and often people make fun of me for being so over the top. So while I was growing up, I was very self-conscious and I often did my best to dampen my expressivity and to seem a little bit less enthusiastic because I didn't want to be judged. At one point, I even had one client tell me that it had been challenging to work with me because I was always so happy. And my grad school advisor often called me the Energizer Bunny, and I don't know if that was always meant in a positive way. So, needless to say, I had received lots of messages about bringing things down a notch or two and not being so enthusiastic and energetic. And at times, I certainly have allowed those messages to impact how I've shown up and have allowed basically my energy to ebb and flow throughout the years. However, these past few years have confirmed some of my suspicions, and I've also gathered some more evidence about the importance of being enthusiastic and energetic. I'm sorry, I keep looking up. My cat's kind of jumping up all over the place. So, while I have been teaching principles and aspects of energy psychology for the past few years, this year was powerful for me in witnessing just how our energy and enthusiasm can impact our life and the things that we want to bring and manifest into our lives. So while I'm going to be sharing about a moment that I'm not super proud, it's also for me important to share honestly and vulnerably because I am certainly human and not perfect. And I think that we often learn so much more from the mistakes that we make than from the things that often go really smoothly. So, to make the story short, I basically burnt out. I was working too much, doing too much of one thing, and feeling less and less fulfilled with what I was doing. And if you know anything about me, in general, I would probably characterize myself as an eclectic creator. So, that means that I'm often in need to be creating, learning, or innovating in some way or another. And so I burnt out. I wasn't doing those things, and I got to a place where I just didn't even want to work anymore. My energy totally dropped. And what was really fascinating for me to see is that without me doing anything else, everything began to dry up. So, no more new clients, no more referrals. I even lost some clients, which that's pretty rare. And as you can imagine, that caused a significant amount of financial and overall general stress, which leads to even greater energy decreases, downsizing, and I felt a little bit like this crazy downward spiral, and I just didn't know what to do. I felt really confused, very conflicted about what to do, because when I really got very honest with myself, I really didn't want to keep doing more of the same. And so basically, I was having this energetic conflict. And what felt more true at an energy level was that I needed a break. I needed to do less and slow down. And basically, what happened is that obviously my enthusiasm and overall joy and positive emotion, for that matter, decreased, and my energy decreased. So, for those of you that are familiar with the vibrational consciousness scale, this is total no surprise for you. For those of you that have never heard of that term, it's basically a scale that was first brought into light by Stephen Hawking, and basically states that emotional states have an equal energetic, vibrational, energetic score. And so that means that the lower the energy vibration, the more negative the emotion is. And then the more positive the emotion is, then the higher the energetic vibration becomes, which kind of makes sense, right? So if you think about it, when you feel really enthusiastic and joyful and optimistic and happy, we tend to have lots of energy. And, I've been known to be jumping up and down and dancing or singing. So obviously when we're feeling enthusiasm, there's all this excess energy that we are generating. And obviously at the bottom, we are probably even, our body might show it, right? Like our body posture might kind of droop, our eyes, our head might droop, our face muscles might droop. So just to kind of give you, I'm not going to go through the entire scale, but just to kind of give you an idea, at the bottom of that scale is shame, guilt, and apathy. Shame, guilt, apathy, fear, those are kind of the bottom energetic, vibrational level emotions. And then at the top, it's peace, joy, love, enthusiasm. Okay. So in a separate study, as I was reading and studying about high performance, because that's been my passion for so many years, and that's been the one constant for me that has never really decreased. And so often when I notice that, things aren't feeling quite right and my energy drops, I usually go back to reading and looking at high performance stuff, because that always energizes me and kind of realigns me in one way or another. So there was a study that was done on high performance and high performers. And basically they found that enthusiasm alone was independently predicting higher life satisfaction, purpose in life, positive emotion, personal growth, self-acceptance, environmental mastery, engagement, positive relationships, meaning more money, and higher achievement, which is really quite fascinating. So it makes sense that if we want to experience more of those positive things in our lives, that then we would want to summon as much enthusiasm and excitement as possible. Do you agree? Anyway, positive emotion in general really is one of the greatest predictors of high energy and high performance. So what we've looked at is that people with positive emotion tend to have more satisfying marriages, they make more money, they have better health, and they perform better in tests. They usually make better decisions, they're more effective with their teams, they're more effective with as a leader. Physicians actually make better diagnoses, and then people in general just kinder and more helpful to others. And what's even better for me and what's even more exciting is that now science is proving it. So neuroscience is now finding that actually positive emotions are prompting new cell growth, which is what we call neuroplasticity, which is the ability of the brain to grow and expand and to create new neural connections with new neural networks. Whereas negative emotions actually is being seen to cause greater decay in the brain. So some food for thought there, right? So one of the greatest gifts that we have is that the only three things that we have control in our lives are our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions. So if you think that you can control the things, then you might be kidding yourself. So I just want to remind you, like all of us, the only three things that we have full control over are our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions. So of course, if you're experiencing more positive emotions, then you alone are capable of changing it, and you alone are capable of then choosing to bring all kinds of benefits to your life and those around you. So being able to do this does require that you and I and everybody, that we stop pointing fingers to others and blaming our happiness on external factors or other people, because ultimately, no matter what's going on, no matter who you're with, you get to choose how you feel and what you want to focus on. So one of the things that high performers often do, and is that they've developed the ability to will themselves and to shift themselves emotionally into a positive emotional state, and that they can do so at will. And in fact, I believe that once you're capable of doing this, you pretty much can have the world at your fingertips, because that means that you are now no longer allowing any other thing or people to influence how you are reacting. You basically become the master of your life, the master of your experience. It doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. You can always choose how you want to show up, how you want to experience, how you want to, the emotion that you want to be experiencing, and therefore the actions and behaviors that you want to exhibit. So, of course, knowing all of this, I decided that the first step was to simply let go of fear, right? It's very easy that when we get caught in that spiral, is that we just tune into fear. And of course, fear just brings all kinds of energy to our amygdala and then decreases our efficacy in making good decisions, etc. So I really, really recommended and increased the time that I meditate each morning and each night. And I decided to just simply let go of fear and to trust myself, to trust the universe, and to attune to those things that actually bring me joy. I started drawing again. I resumed my aerial dancing. I made time for walks. And then I used the extra time to write, to launch and develop new courses, and to really sketch out this retreat that I've been wanting to do for quite a few years. And overall, I focused on how I wanted to feel and how I wanted to show up for others, and especially my loved ones and my clients. The other thing that I did is that I reframed the situation and I began focusing on practicing gratitude for what was actually showing up in my life. And so I had a lot more time where, when things are usually going well for me, my time is very greatly reduced because I'm very busy. And so all of a sudden I had more time to sleep in, more time to spend with my partner, to pursue my hobbies, to pursue new ideas, to do a ton of personal development, and to travel. And the more I focused on being grateful and being joyful, things began to shift very slowly at first, almost imperceptibly, and then in a really big, massive way. And the more that I reconnected to what I loved, the more things began to flow in both of my businesses. And in a way, it felt almost effortless. Clients that I really wanted to work with were coming to me. People that wanted to partner with me were just showing up in magical ways. So I started doing things that I was a lot more excited about. And of course, we're making more money, paying down our debts. But even bigger than that was feeling a sense of deep connection and satisfaction to my work, to the people that I work with, and just feeling excited about just creating a different life. I even broke through my fears and my hesitations about having this 3-day live retreat that I've been wanting to do for so long, but I had felt afraid that I may not be able to pull off an entire 3-day live event, or that I couldn't stand for that long, and all kinds of bullshit that I was saying. And that was one of the most epic, magical experiences for everyone who attended. It was just magical. And what it showed me is that when I'm aligned, when I'm enthusiastic and energized about something, anything can happen. I can make anything happen, and so can you. So I am sharing this because I want you to see that manifestation becomes really easy, and we can really easily get into that co-creative flow. And yet, it needed to start with me. I needed to decide to bring the presence, to bring the emotion, and to bring the energy. And so we each need to generate it. We are like power plants. So we need to generate it. We cannot get it from something else or someone else. We must first generate it within ourselves. And then when we do, then everything we touch can turn into gold. So how exactly can you shift? Of course, I gave you some of the things that I did, and there are a ton of ways. Of course, I can't go into all of them right now with you, but if you really want to work on this, just reach out to me and we can talk about how I can help you or your team improve in this area and, kind of shift into that high performance area. But for the time being, I want to share 3 things that you can start practicing today. So, oh yeah, I want to share something else before that. The key component for this is that the only way that we will begin to making a shift is through practice. By creating habits in our life and then practicing them, it's really the only way that we get to master many of these things. As you know, I have a background as a dancer and athlete, and which is probably why high performance resonates for me so much. And so if you think about it from the physical standpoint, you cannot just decide that you're going to go run a marathon and then you just, grab on your sneakers and run off 26 miles. If you decide that you want to run a marathon, then you need to give yourself enough time, and then you need to begin a training routine that it's gradual, and you need to establish habits and talk to your partner and figure out how you're going to begin to change your life, to implement all the habits that you need in order for you to be successful at running this race. So same thing applies here. So I just wanted to give you that, because obviously if you do these things once, they're not going to do much for you, right? So these are practices, meaning these are habits that you need to find a way to implement into your life and into your day every single day. It's also part of the reason why I have chosen to start and end my day with a meditation practice, because it is, again, a practice, and it is coming back again and again, regardless of how you're feeling, regardless of whether you're like really happy and joyful, and zen, or whether you're like super stressed and anxious, that you make the commitment to doing a particular practice, and then you keep going back to it. Okay, so practice number 1 is to set an intention. So I'm going to summarize these practices as IFG. I for intention, F for feeling, and G for gratitude. So I'm going to go through each one of these. So I call this IFG: intention, feeling, and gratitude. So practice number 1, which is the intention, is to start your day by setting an intention for the positive emotion that you want to experience or practice that day. Many of you know that I am very much into essential oils, and I really love using essential oils as a grounding and anchoring practice to setting that positive emotion, because when you tie it, the more that you stimulate your senses, and the more that you add all of your senses to what you want to create, the more real it becomes and the more powerful it becomes. So I often like to choose a particular scent that I've tied to a particular positive emotion, and I even create a mantra. So as I'm applying the oils, I repeat the mantra. Then I set an alarm. So I am focusing, visualizing, putting oil, smelling the oil, making an affirmation. So I'm going to give you an example of one that I often do, that it's, I am flexible and resilient, and I go with the flow. So that's one of my little affirmations and mantras that I use about just being able to let go and just go with the flow. So, and then you would want to set up an alarm in your phone to go off several times a day to remind you to practice staying in that positive emotion. Because as you know, once you get out of your bed or out of your house, then all of a sudden we get to experience all kinds of other things and other people and other situations that might impact that emotion. And so perhaps you set the alarm and you attach one word. Maybe it's peace, maybe it's joy. One of the things I had taught many of my clients, and I got this from Gabby Bernstein, was this little mudra that was like, peace begins with me. Peace begins with me. And so it's just a little affirmation that you attach to a particular movement. And again, these are just simply anchors, just like the smell might be. So that then the alarm goes off, and then maybe you bring up that smell and that oil, and then it reminds you of that positive emotion. And then you maybe breathe, or, ask yourself like, okay, am I being joyful? Am I being enthusiastic? Am I being optimistic? Or am I being critical or negative? Or and then simply shifting yourself back to that. You can also create random triggers, which means that you can buy some of those little round stickers at the store and then place them all over your environment. And then every time that your gaze rests upon one of those stickers, then that would be a trigger to remind you to reconnect to that emotion every time that you see it. Now, maybe you can use a trigger like every time that you use the restroom, or every time that you see yourself in the mirror when you're washing your hands, or every time that you cross the doorway. It doesn't really matter. It just matters that you set up a trigger and then you start practicing it in a consistent way, because that is where we tend to fall through the cracks. So number 1 was intention. Practice number 2 is feeling. And I cannot overemphasize the power of this particular practice. And in fact, this practice alone was what prompted me to record this video for you, because I see so many people that just seem to either have trouble connecting with positive emotion or kind of dismiss it like, oh, well, that's not that important. And so, yes, it is really important, because experiencing it fully, number 1, when you are having that positive emotion, is super important for you to wire it in. The more that you connect it to something to a smell, to a sensation, to a sound, the more powerful it becomes, right? Because then it becomes more real. So when you experience a positive feeling, and if you're somebody that has trouble connecting with them, in the moment, take notice and then take a few minutes to write down the experience of it. Write down how it felt in your body. As people have said, like, oh, my heart feels like it's bursting, or, I have butterflies coming out of my my mouth, or like I just feel like I just want to break into dance, or whatever that might be. Like, notice. My partner, he's so funny. Whenever he eats something that he likes, he just kind of goes like this. He smiles and he kind of does a little dance, and it's so unconscious. It's very, very cute. And so again, just kind of connecting to that emotion, because the more connected you are, the easier it'll be for you to recall it, right? And so you want to connect it to all of these senses to wire it in. This is what's creating all of those neural patterns in your brain that allows you to then create greater associations with positive things than with negative things. The second part of that practice is that for you to share the positive experience and the positive emotion with others. So share the good stories multiple times. Tell them over and over to different friends. The more that we focus on something, the bigger it gets. So you've heard me say this in many ways. Those of you that work with me, whatever you focus on is what grows. So what you focus on, it's going to get bigger and bigger. So we usually tend to focus on the bad stories, and then we tell the bad stories over and over, and then we sort of tuck away or throw away the good ones. And so we're actually, when we're over focused on the negative, then we're actually wiring in more negative feelings and more negative stories and emotions. So you want to do exactly the opposite. You want to try to forget and almost give no attention to the negative, and then make a big deal out of all the positive things. Share them, talk to people about them, share your pictures, journal about them. The more that you share this enthusiasm, the easier it'll be for you to reconnect to that. Now I'm going to give you a second tip. Most successful athletes, high performers, surgeons, when we ask what is sort of like the magic trick, and there's lots of strategies that we teach. So this is just, but I'm going to say that one of the things that people say that contribute to their success the most is feeling. So I've asked several high performers, and when they get it, it's like they say feeling, feeling, feeling. And what that means is that they were able to tap into and connect to that feeling of success or of joy, of optimism. And then they use that feeling to fuel them to go into their next race, to go into their next board meeting, to go into their next client, whatever that is, right? And so super important that you can connect to that positive emotion, to that enthusiasm and optimism and joy, and then bring that into the next moment, rather than what normally happens is that we allow something to bring some negative feeling, and then we drag that into the next thing and into the next thing. Okay, and then practice number 3, which is the G, and that's gratitude. So set an intention at the beginning of the day as you're setting the intention to feel positive, to notice the gifts and the bonuses you are receiving from life each day. So what this does is that it's setting up a course for that part of your brain that's called the reticular activating system, or the RAS, which is a little bit like a signaling system, and it operates at an unconscious and conscious level. So I'm going to give you an example of how this works. So perhaps whenever you wanted to buy a new car, or rent an apartment, or maybe buy a house, all of a sudden you said, well, I need to buy a car, or I need to find an apartment for rent, or a house for sale. And then all of a sudden, it seems like almost unconsciously, you start noticing all of the for sale signs or for rent signs available. And then you start realizing, like, wow, there's all of these houses for sale, and there's all of these apartments for rent and cars for sale, and blah, blah, blah. And you think, wow, there's a lot more now that I'm looking for it. The reality of it is that there aren't any more than there were before. However, you have now sigged that little part of your brain, the reticular activating system, to start looking for those. And so all of a sudden now you are focused on finding those things. So in that way, the G for gratitude is to setting the intention to notice the gifts and the bonuses. Sometimes people like to think of gifts. Sometimes people like to think of blessings. Sometimes people like to think about it as a bonus from the universe. However you want to see it, I don't care. But I want you to set that RAS to the gifts that you're going to be receiving each day. And then set alarms as reminders that asks, what gift have I received today? How am I being supported? What is the bonus that I am receiving? And this is kind of the advanced version might be is like, how might I be a gift to others? Because then when we turn gratitude and then we use it to serve others, then we often experience greater sense of meaning, purpose, and satisfaction. So IFG, intention, feeling, gratitude. So I hope that you use these practices as you go into your next year. I am wishing you an amazing new year filled with all kinds of health, joy, and prosperity. And shoot me an email and let me know how you are applying these teachings into your life and what you start noticing that starts shifting for you. Until next time, this is Dr. Elena Estanol. Have a wonderful day.